So here's the thing. Welcome to the latest episode of Bank Chats on video, right?
Hey, first, yeah,
yeah. This is actually kind of cool. We're trying this out.
House, yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah. This is our first go at this,
yeah.
Right? And so we're gonna give video a shot because we've noticed that a lot of people are watching us on YouTube, or well, up until now, listening to us on YouTube.
Yeah,
right. And so we're gonna try to give the viewers what they demand. Now, once they see the two of us, they may not demand it again.
right. They're gonna go back to Apple Podcasts.
Yeah. Because I mean. You're an attractive fellow. I'm not so much.
Oh, no.
We're going to give this a go. So what are we talking about today?
So we were in we took a road trip a week ago, and we tend to talk about cars while we're in a car for whatever reason.
Go, yeah.
So we thought maybe talking about buying cars versus leasing cars. I'm always in the market for a new car, but I've never, I haven't pulled that trigger for a long time.
Yeah.
And I've never leased a car, so I know nothing about leasing cars, really.
I have honestly never leased a car either. I've always bought cars. But in the interest of this conversation.
Yeah.
Right. we decided we're each going to take a position. Right. And we sort of flipped a coin, and
I got my car. Yeah.
Yeah. And I got leasing a car. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
So
I learned a lot about leasing cars just doing research too. So
yeah. So but to your point, I've never leased a car.
Okay.
So everything that I'm saying is purely based on what I've read.
Okay.
It has no basis in real world experience.
Okay.
So what did you find? So let's talk about buying a car, because I would argue that's probably the more common thing for people to do.
You hear more about buying a car. Yeah.
Yeah. So when you buy a car, I mean, I think most of us know the general. Now, do you buy new cars or do you buy used cars?
I've only bought used cars, yeah, and I'm young, so I haven't bought very many of those used cars yet. But yeah, we were always a used car family. I think my dad, his most recent car is a new car, but it was one of those end of the year stock. They're trying to liquidate, and but he's held on to it for. I think he just hit 300,000 miles on it a couple months ago.
Wow, that's impressive.
He was a salesman, so he did a lot of traveling back before he retired.
That's impressive. 300,000 miles on a car. That's not a corporate car,
right?
Something.
No, I'm not a fleet car or anything. Yeah.
Now, does your dad drive, or did your dad drive for his business?
Oh yeah, he handled all of Western Pennsylvania, Central Western Pennsylvania was his territory. So he traveled a lot.
So it was kind of a business thing.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't like it was a rental car or anything like that.
Right. But he took care of it. So
yeah, that's pretty impressive. I've only bought used cars myself.
Okay.
My wife is a different story. She was always a new car girl.
Okay.
And some of the arguments that she made for always buying new are some of the arguments that people make for leasing.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
But I grew up, I'm the son of a mechanic. My dad's been in business forever. So we always just, bought used and fixed.
Yeah, as you could.
Right. We had to fix.
Right.
Yeah. So what car do you have now?
Oh, I have. So my last car a couple of years ago blew an engine. So I'm.
Oh, okay.
I'm running I'd love to have an SUV, right? I just have a little sedan right now, but
yeah. When I started working for the bank, I had a pickup truck.
Okay, I'd love to have a pickup truck.
Yeah, it was great. And then part of my job at the time was going out to every branch, and it was costing me a fortune. I mean, granted, I got paid mileage and stuff, but it was still costing a fortune in gas and things like that, and tires, brakes, and all that kind of stuff. And so I ended up buying a sedan, and then we recently upgraded to a because we wore it out. We had the sedan, we wore it out, and so now we have an SUV, and I do like it.
Yeah.
The older I get, the more I like getting into things that don't require me to get down low.
I know. I miss getting in a car up high. Yeah, I took my parents for we went somewhere over the weekend, and the moans and groans out of them trying to get in and out of a little sedan at 70 years old. Yeah.
Now, when you've bought, do you usually go through the dealer, or is it something where you go to the bank? So there's two different. I mean,
right,
you do that, and it depends on where you get your loan from.
Yeah, right. And in the past, I've gotten my loans from banks. I've never gotten a loan from dealership. Banks were, back then tended to, give a little better deal, than the dealership. But
so, what are some of the advantages you found for buying? Like, either in your personal experience or in your research.
Yeah. So, I mean, one big perk is if you are buying and you're buying used, you may not even have to take out a loan. Whereas with a lease, you have a payment, a guaranteed payment every month.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a huge one.
So you're building, you're arguing you're building equity is what you're saying, right? Because if you could build it off.
Right. You could build equity.
Or at the very least, you're paying it off.
You're paying it off. Yes.
Yes.
And you own something then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the thing about cars, and this is what I was thinking, this is one of the biggest arguments I think that people have for leasing cars.
Yeah.
Is that your cars so rarely build value.
Yeah.
It's not much like real estate or when you invest in I mean, everything can lose value. Don't get me wrong. You can buy a house and lose value on it.
Sure.
No
sure.
doubt. But traditionally speaking, you're going to likely get at least as much out of your house as long as you maintain it, take care of it. Your neighborhood doesn't go south.
Yeah.
You're probably going to get at least as much out of it as what you paid. Whereas most of the time with a car, you're not.
So, as soon as you drive it off the lot, which I don't understand. So cars depreciate in value the first couple of years. And I don't, you'd think that they depreciate faster the older they got because things start going wrong with them. But
yeah, you would think. I mean,
and that was one of the negatives I found for leasing a car. You're paying during the time when that car is depreciating in value the fastest.
Yeah.
So you're paying the most.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's true. Some of the arguments that I found to solve that problem is when you're leasing a car, you're getting the best safety features, the most current safety features.
Yeah. You're
getting the most current technology. Yeah. So, a lot of cars these days, they're not like they used to be back in the 70s, 80s, whatever. I mean, your car, during COVID, there came a point where people weren't buying cars because they couldn't get computer chips.
Right.
Because they couldn't get an alternator.
Right.
Right. They couldn't get computer chips to do all this stuff that they have in the dashboards now with different car plays and GPS units and all that kind of stuff. Right. So you're getting the latest technology if you're leasing, and usually your lease is like 3 years.
Yeah.
So you're likely you're always going to have the latest technology, but you're always going to have a payment, right? Because you're always you take it back to the dealer on month 36. You say, "Here you go."
Yeah.
And you hand it back to them. You don't have to worry about how much your car is depreciated in value because the dealer's going to take it back.
That was already predetermined what you were going to pay based on that depreciation at the end of that term. Yeah.
Yeah. So you don't have to worry about that. And theoretically, you're going to get another newer car with the newest safety features and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Right.
So I guess that's where they're making their money, is they're making their money on that, and then they can turn around and sell that car as a used car.
Yeah. Which, I've looked at like fleet cars or, lease cars like that before because they're taken care of because they have requirements for mileage and getting them serviced and stuff like that. You have to use factory parts. You can't just put on anything from, an aftermarket fix for a lease car. Yeah.
Yeah. But that is something. So when you're trying to calculate, so here's what I did. I went and I grabbed I went and looked and see what the two most commonly purchased vehicles were in the United States in 2024. Okay. One was an SUV.
Okay.
All right. And we're not endorsing anything. I'm just telling you what they were.
Yeah.
Right. The most commonly purchased SUV in the United States in 2024 was a Toyota RAV4.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Which I was surprised.
Yeah.
The most common vehicle overall sold in the United States was the Ford F-150. The Ford F-Series is all. They say that all the time on the commercials.
Yeah.
The most commonly sold.
Yeah.
But they're actually the most commonly sold vehicle in the U.S. by like several 100,000 units.
Oh, I would have never guessed that. No.
Yeah. So what I did was I just went to the manufacturer's website.
Okay.
Now, just like anything else, where you live in the country, sometimes where you live in your state, is going to determine pricing, right? So this is this is general pricing. You're most likely not going to get this particular deal if you went out and bought a Toyota RAV4 and F because your dealership, your mileage may vary.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. That took me a second, but yeah.
So the on the dealership website was a deal for the Ford F-150, 60 months.
Okay.
So 5 years.
Yeah.
At 3.9% interest, and $2,000 down, assuming you put $2,000 down on the cost, was $900 a month for a Ford F-150.
Wow. Yeah.
Which is, now there are different trim models and packages and things like that.
Yeah.
But to lease it for 36 months, of course, there's no interest because it's built into the lease price, right? You had to put almost 3 times as much down. So it's $5,700 down.
Really?
Yeah. But it's only $290 a month.
See, I thought leases, the down payment was far less, and that's why people were, normally when you get a lease, you get a little higher end vehicle than you normally would if you were buying a car, But well, I guess not. Yeah.
Now, see, I don't know if the down payment could be a trade-in. Like, I don't know.
Okay.
Like, it could be a trade-in or something like that.
Yeah.
$5,700 down. But you're at 2/3 the monthly cost.
Yeah.
Right? $900 a month versus $290 a month is a huge swing.
Oh, yeah.
In terms of your cost. Now, you made a point which I did not look up, mileage. So I know on leases, you have to stay within a mileage window.
It's usually about 15,000 miles, 12 to 15,000 miles. And then if you go over that, it's 10 to 25 cents per mile. Per mile, usually.
Okay.
So that can get, pretty pricey if you are a traveler.
So do they just tack that on at the, like, do they look at your mileage when you go to turn the car in and be like, whoa, you went 5,000 miles over, you're going to spend...
I would assume, or I don't know, because, if you take out a lease for 3 years, then, I mean, are you turning your numbers in every year, or is it just, like you said, and at the end of the lease in general?
I don't know the answer.
I don't know either.
But that is something that you'd want to talk to. When you're figuring out, I think the reason we're having this conversation on bank chats is because we're trying to educate people on this idea of what's the most financially advantageous for you.
Yeah.
Right. And so I guess it really depends on how much money you have available to you for down payments.
Mm-hmm.
Because even when you're buying a car, it could be a down payment.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It could be a trade-in.
Yeah.
Something like that. But leasing a car, typically you can get more car for less money because you're only leasing it for the first, say, 3 years of its life.
Yeah.
But at the end of it all, you don't have anything to show for it.
Right. And if you're like me and my family, you run the car till it don't run anymore,
Yeah.
So you're saving money by keeping that car for years and years and years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, some people would argue that the cost of maintenance is higher when you buy, because the longer you own the car, the more maintenance it needs.
Yeah, you got to find that balance. When it starts nickel and diming you, is that couple $1,000s a year in maintenance worth, keeping, or do I start looking for a new vehicle?
Yeah. And you could make the same argument about buying a new vehicle. I mean, I said my dad's been a mechanic for many years.
Yeah.
And there are times when people will say, well, I don't want to put $800 into this car. 20, say it's a 15-year-old car. I don't want to put $1,000 into it. Okay, but that it depends on what that $1,000 is.
Yeah.
And how much the car is probably worth as, in its current state.
Right.
Because you can spend $1,000 on tires these days.
Right.
And no matter what car you own, you're going to have to buy tires.
Yeah.
Right.
And we always say you can't buy a car for $1,000. So is it worth putting $1,000 in? A lot of times, yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes it is. And some people will say, well, if I go out and lease a new car, like I could lease a new Ford F-150 for $250 or $300 a month. Say.
Yeah.
But that's per month. So in months 1, 2, and 3, you're ahead of the game. By month 4, right?
Yeah.
You can't even make it out of a season of the year. Right? If you release that car on day 1 of winter, by spring, you're now losing money.
Yeah. But your warranty on that car is usually, 2 or 3 years. So it's covered usually, the entirety of your lease too. So you're not paying a lot necessarily for fixes and stuff like that.
No, but you're still making a car payment.
Oh yeah.
So assuming, I'm sorry, I should have clarified. So assuming that your argument was that when you pay it off, it's yours.
Oh, okay, yeah.
You don't have a car payment.
Right.
Putting $1,000 into a car you own versus taking on a car payment.
Oh, yeah.
Right. That car payment, like by month 4, you're paying out more than what you would have paid if you'd have just fixed the car you already owned.
Right.
So I did mention the other one. So let me mention this other vehicle. So the Toyota RAV4, which was it's less expensive of a vehicle.
Okay.
First of all.
Yeah.
They're on their website, they said buy 60 months. I tried to keep these the same.
Mm-hmm.
So 5-year payment to buy it at 4.99% interest with an estimated $2,000 down was $535 a month. So significantly less because the vehicle's less expensive.
Mm-hmm.
A lease for 36 months on that car with about $4,000 down was $340 a month. So ironically, even though the car's less expensive, it's a higher lease price than the more expensive Ford, which may play into what you were saying about the depreciation of the vehicle,
mm-hmm.
right? The Ford has a higher ceiling to start with, and then
so you want to lease a vehicle that doesn't depreciate much by the time that lease term has ended.
I guess, yeah. So I guess you're driving the car through, like you said, its most trouble-free years if you're leasing.
Uh-huh.
But you're also driving your car that you're buying for the first 5 or 6 years trouble-free.
Yeah.
Lease may even include free oil changes and other scheduled maintenance, but I don't think you can bank on that. No pun intended.
And so you mean you buy a new car, sometimes that's included too. Dealership wants to make that sale,
Yeah, especially if it's under warranty, I guess.
Yeah.
You can drive higher priced, better equipped vehicle than you might otherwise be able to afford. We kind of covered that already. Active safety features.
Insurance. I found insurance on lease vehicles tends to be higher because the dealership owns that vehicle, so they have requirements for insurance. So usually you pay a little bit higher premium for a leased vehicle.
So is that because? Well, so I guess that depends on your state, right? Because some states require. Does every state require auto insurance now?
I don't know. Probably a minimum, yeah.
I would have to think that every state, although not every state requires state inspections or anything either. So, but you're probably right because they probably require you to have comprehensive insurance plus liability plus accident
because they own it. I mean, and they want it back in the same condition that it came left in.
Yeah, and if they own it, they probably don't want to be paying for property damage or medical bills if you accidentally get into a bad accident and injure somebody.
Right. And that was the other thing. Leased cars, you got to return in the same condition that it's like a rental. I mean, so if you get into a fender bender in a car you own, you can decide whether you're going to fix it or not. Or at least you have to, or you're going to pay the penalty.
Yeah, I think there's, I don't know. I think maybe that's maybe you're the way you phrase it is the best way to look at it. When you're leasing, you're really renting.
You are, yeah. It's a long-term rental.
Yeah. And so just like if you rent an apartment, your landlord's going to want the apartment to be kept in good condition and be able to re-rent it afterward. Not that the dealership's probably going to re-rent your car, but they probably want to sell it.
Yeah.
They're not just going to scrap it after 3 years and you only making partial payment. I did see this. It says here that there could be significant tax advantages for business owners if they lease.
I did see that. Yeah, I didn't read too far into it.
And I didn't read too far into it either because I didn't want to start offering tax advice. Yeah. But it's just something that if you have a tax professional or an accountant or something, you may want to discuss that with them that is leasing your business vehicle or a vehicle that you use partially like your dad for business.
Yeah.
Would it be a tax advantage to lease versus buy?
Yeah. And along those lines, and I don't have this written down or anything. There was 2 types of loans or leases. There's like an open loan or an open lease and a closed lease, where like the closed lease you have to purchase the vehicle after the term has completed. Okay, and I guess that's more common for commercial vehicles. I don't know if there's an advantage to that or not, but just know there are two lease methods, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess in a way that might be kind of like I don't want to say like a balloon payment on a mortgage or something where you pay less upfront for the lease to on the vehicle, and then at the end of the lease, whatever the vehicle then is determined to be worth, you pay the business side, and then maybe that's where your tax advantages come in.
That could
maybe
be,
as a tax write-off or something. I don't know.
Could be.
So I don't know. I still kind of come down on the idea of buying. I mean, even though I was pro lease in this conversation.
Yeah.
Just because I don't like the idea of not owning my own stuff.
I'm the exact same way. Yeah. I don't even like taking loans out for a car if I don't have to, but at least it's going to be mine,
Yeah. And because I do tend to want to fix things rather than just trade it in and stuff. I mean, and I don't always care about whether or not I have the latest gizmo in the car.
Yeah.
I mean, every car today comes with a compass, but how often do you use it?
True.
That used to be a thing. I remember people used to buy those little sticky cups.
Oh yeah,
stick on their dashboard just so they knew which direction they were going. Like it mattered.
Right.
But yeah, it's one of the...
Yeah, I guess it depends on and it's a personal preference. Do you want the latest and greatest, or do you drive a lot of miles, or do you have kids that may be a little bit messy?
That's a good point.
Maybe a reason to buy versus leasing a car, but
and you could, speaking of kids, you could even consider the fact if you have say a 13-year-old at home, right? 4 years, 3 years, maybe they might want a car. So if you buy, maybe hand it down, and then you get a new car. But maybe you want to pass that down to them or something like that. Gives them an opportunity to start with something where they don't have a payment of some sort if they want a car. So there's all kinds of things to consider.
Oh yeah, and don't at least you don't have to worry about selling a car at the end, or if you don't want to trade in a car, you kind of just give it back and have to worry about. So there's benefits to both, but
but from a financial perspective, I think this conversation really ends up being what's most advantageous for you, specifically, because everybody's a little bit different, and if it's really important to you to have, the nicest car on the block and the recent whatever it is, the nicest wheels, the most recent GPS system, whatever it might be, then there's nothing saying that that's a bad thing. It's just that in that case, you may want to lease. If it's more important for you to have something long-term that maybe eventually you don't have to pay for every month, then maybe it's more important to buy.
Yeah.
Or more advantageous to buy.
Yeah, right.
So, all right.
I'm going to keep shopping for cars. I'm not going to buy one, but I'm going to keep shopping for cars. We were actually considering buying new. Whenever I was getting rid of the sedan that we had, and I'll tell you, at the time we were looking, it was inventory was terrible. You couldn't get anything, and the car prices were just insane. Now you're starting to see a lot of these things on TV where they're starting to offer these low interest, for qualified buyers, right?
Whatever in other words, if you have a credit score of 750 or higher, probably, you can get 0% or whatever. And that's the other thing. Look at interest. I mean, just like when you're buying a house, or just when you're buying anything else on a loan, a credit card, whatever, you got to consider your interest rate. If you can get a 0% for 60 months on a car, it's like you're not paying any interest whatsoever. That could considerably impact what your actual monthly payment is, versus if you're paying even 5%.
Definitely, yeah.
All right. So you're still going to buy. I'm still going to buy. We haven't convinced each other of anything.
No,
is what you're saying.
You're right. It's a draw.
All right. Let us know in the comments what you guys think. Do you buy or do you lease?
Yeah.
Let us know in the comments. Drop us a note either at AmeriServ.com/bankchats. There's a form there you can use to communicate with us. You can there's even a link, I think, in the description where you can text.
Yeah. We make it real easy for you.
Yeah. So let us know what you think. Buy or lease. And, maybe we'll talk about it on a future episode. Maybe you. I'm hang on. I'm looking at the camera. Now that we have them, maybe you have an idea. Let us know.
Sounds good, Joe.
All right. Thanks. This podcast focuses on having valuable conversations on various topics related to banking and financial health. The podcast is grounded in having open conversations with professionals and experts, with the goal of helping to take some of the mystery out of financial and related topics, as learning about financial products and services can help you make more informed financial decisions. Please keep in mind that the information contained within this podcast and any resources available for download from our website or other resources relating to bank chats is not intended and should not be understood or interpreted to be financial advice. The host, guests, and production staff of Bank Chats expressly recommend that you seek advice from a trusted financial professional before making financial decisions. The host of Bank Chats is not an attorney, accountant, or financial advisor, and the program is simply intended as one source of information. The podcast is not a substitute for a financial professional who is aware of the facts and circumstances of your individual situation. Thank you for listening. Please check out our full library of episodes, which can be found on the AmeriServ.com website. You can also download or stream the podcast from your favorite podcast app.